What happens when the truth is buried under 65 years of Montana snow? This is dark reflex. The wind across the plains of Great Falls, Montana, carries a certain weight, a heavy silence that presses against the ears of anyone wandering too far from the safety of the town lights. On a cold night in January 1956, two teenagers walked into that silence and simply ceased to exist. Lloyd Bogle was 18, a young man with his life stretching toward a future that would never arrive. Patricia Kalitzke was just 16, a girl whose laughter was suddenly extinguished in the frost of a Montana winter. They went to the movies that night, a standard date in a quiet post-war town, and were never seen alive again. Their disappearance triggered a search that would haunt the community for decades. By the following morning, the weight of their absence had settled over their families like a suffocating shroud. When they failed to return home, authorities were alerted, but the harsh winter conditions immediately worked against them. In 1956, forensics was still a developing field. Investigations relied heavily on witness testimony, physical searches, and instinct rather than the advanced techniques we have today. The search stretched across the vast frozen landscape surrounding Great Falls, a region where the terrain itself can hide a secret for an eternity beneath snow and ice. Days turned into weeks. Hope began to fade. And then, as the winter slowly loosened its grip, the landscape began to reveal what it had been hiding. Lloyd Bogle was discovered first. His body had been left in a remote area. The signs were clear. This was not an accident. It was violence. Not long after, Patricia Kalitzke was found, miles away. The reality became undeniable. This was a calculated double murder. Investigators moved quickly, but time had already done its damage. The brutal Montana winter had compromised much of the physical evidence. What remained was incomplete, fragmented, difficult to interpret. They questioned friends, family members, and known offenders in the area. They followed every lead, but each one faded. The trail was cold before it had even begun. The pressure to solve the case was immense. Yet eventually the investigation reached a point where nothing new could be uncovered. And still, it was never truly abandoned. The case remained in the files of the Cascade County Sheriff's Office, passed from one investigator to another, a quiet, persistent reminder of something unfinished. Years passed, then decades. Witnesses forgot details, potential suspects moved away or died. Evidence sat in storage, preserved, but silent, waiting for something that did not yet exist. Technology. Investigators continued to revisit the case over the years, re-examining what little they had, hoping that a new perspective might reveal something hidden. But the answer remained out of reach. Until the world changed. By the early 21st century, forensic science had advanced in ways no one in 1956 could have imagined. A new method emerged: forensic genetic genealogy. For the first time, degraded samples could be analyzed in ways that were previously impossible. The investigation returned to the evidence, specifically the clothing Patricia had been wearing. For decades, it had been preserved, stored carefully, untouched, waiting. When the samples were finally processed using advanced DNA sequencing, the result was definitive: a genetic profile, clear, identifiable. After 65 years, the silence broke. The DNA led to a man named Kenneth Gould, a local resident at the time of the murders, a man who had lived quietly within the same community, possibly even crossing paths with those involved in the search. As investigators rebuilt the timeline, everything began to align: the locations, the time frame, the opportunity. The scattered pieces of the puzzle, dormant for decades, finally clicked into place. But the truth came with a cost. Kenneth Gould had died in 2007, 14 years before the breakthrough. He was never arrested, never formally questioned, never forced to answer for what he had done. He lived out the rest of his life in relative anonymity, while the families of Lloyd and Patricia waited for answers that would not come in time. The case was officially solved. The truth was known. History could finally be corrected, but justice never arrived. And that leaves something difficult to reconcile, because closure is not the same as justice. Knowing the truth does not undo the past. It does not replace what was taken. It does not fill the silence left behind. This case forces a deeper question. What does it mean for a case to be closed? Is it the identification of a name or accountability? The investigators who carried this case across decades understood something fundamental, that even when justice is out of reach, the truth still matters. It must be preserved, protected, pursued, because time does not erase the truth, it only buries it. Sometimes under years, sometimes under generations, but it remains, waiting for the moment when something, science, persistence, or chance, finally brings it back into the light. Lloyd Bogle and Patricia Kalitzke were not forgotten. Even when the world moved on, their story remained. And in the end, it was the smallest piece of evidence that spoke the loudest. A silent witness, waiting 65 years to be heard. Some mysteries aren't unsolved. They're just waiting. Stay in the dark with me.